Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, I am Lia Agustina from 5PA class. In this case, I want to tell you about a smoking, so let us begin. First is about the definition of the smoking. When you conduct research about a group of people, it is rarely possible to collect data from everybody in the group. Instead, we select a sample. A sample is defined as a small set of data that the researchers receive or get from a regular population by using a predefined selection method. Next is the difference between the population and the sample. First, you need to understand the difference between a population and a sample and identify the target population of your research. The first is the population. It's the entire group that you want to draw conclusions about your research. Meanwhile, the sample is the specific group or individuals that you have collected. The population can be defined in terms of geographical location, sex, income, and many other characteristics. Next is types of samples. There are two types of sampling methods. First is probability sampling, and the second is non-probability sampling. Probability sampling is a method of verifying a sample where the objects are selected from a population based on the theory of probability. Meanwhile, non-probability sampling in a non-probability sample, individuals are selected based on non-random criteria, and not every individual has a chance of non-probability sampling techniques are often approached for exploratory and qualitative research. In these types of research, the aim is not to test a hypothesis about a broad population, but to develop an initial understanding of a small or underserved population. Next, probability sampling can be further classified into four distinct types of samples. They are: first, simple random samples. In a simple random sample, every member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. It is mainly used in quantitative research. If you want to produce results that are representative of the whole population, you need to use a probability sampling technique. The second is systematic sampling. Systematic sampling is similar to simple random sampling, but it is usually slightly easier to conduct. To conduct this type of sampling, you can use tools like random number generators or other techniques that are based entirely on chance. The third is stratified sampling. Stratified sampling involves dividing the population into subpopulations that may differ in important ways. Every member of the population is listed with a number, but instead of randomly generating numbers, individuals are chosen at regular intervals. Fourth is cluster sampling. Cluster sampling also involves dividing the population into subgroups, but each subgroup should have similar characteristics to the whole sample. To use this sample method, you divide the population into subgroups called strata. Based on the relevant characteristics, example, gender, age, range, income bracket, or job role. Next is we can classify non-probability sampling into four distinct types of samples. They are confidence sampling. Confidence sampling is defined as a method adopted by researchers where they collect market research data from confidently available pool of respondents. This an easy and inexpensive way to gather initial data, but there is no way to tell if the sample is representative of the population, so it can produce generalizing results. Next, the second is judgment or purposive samples. The judgment or purposive sampling method is a method of developing a sample purely on the basis and the discretion of the researcher, purely on the basis of the nature of study along with his or her understanding of the target. The third is snowball sampling. Snowball sampling or chain referral sampling is defined as a non-probability sampling technique in which the sample have traits that are rare to find. If the population is hard to access, snowball sampling can be used to recruit participants via other participants. The number of people you have access to snowballs as you get in contact with more people. Next is quota sampling. Quota sampling is a method of collecting a sample where the researcher has the liberty to select a sample based on their strata. The primary characteristic of this method is that two people can exist under two different conditions. Next is determine a sample. Four important variables that form the basic characteristic of a sample. They are, first, population size. The population size is all the people that can be considered for the research study. This number, in most cases, runs into huge amounts. Next is the margin of errors. The margin of error is divided by a percentage that is a statistical inference about the confidence of what number of the population defined. The actual views of the whole population. Then the third is standard deviation. This metric covers the variance in a survey. The next is confidence level. This metric measures where the actual mean falls within a confidence interval. The most common confidence intervals are 20%, 25%, and 29%. Next is sampling advantages. Some of the most significant advantages are reduced cost and time. Since using a sample reduces the number of people that have to be researched out to, it thus reduces cost and time. The second is reduced resource deployment. It is obvious that if the number of people involved in a research study is much lower due to the sample, the researchers require are also much less. The third is accuracy of data. Since the sample is indicative of the population, the data collected is accurate. Fourth is intensive and exhaustive data. Since there are lesser respondents, the data collected from a sample is intense and truth. More time and effort is given to each respondent rather than having to collect data from a lot of people. And the last is apply properties to a larger population. Since the sample is indicative of the broader population, it is safe to say that the data collected and analyzed from the sample can be applied to the larger population, and it would hold true. Okay, thank you everyone. I think that's all. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. See you.